In 1227, the most powerful man who ever lived died somewhere in the mountains of Central Asia. His body was carried back to Mongolia in total secrecy. Every single person the funeral procession encountered on the road was killed. Every witness, every farmer, every shepherd who happened to look up at the wrong moment. When he was finally buried, the soldiers who dug the grave were executed. Then the soldiers who executed those soldiers were executed. Then they drove 10,000 horses over the burial site to erase every trace of disturbed earth. To this day, with satellites, ground-penetrating radar, and entire archaeological teams dedicated to finding it, nobody has found the grave of Genghis Khan. The man conquered more land than any human being in history, and his last act was to disappear from it completely. This is his story, and it starts with a baby holding a fistful of blood. Around 1162, in the Henti Mountains of Mongolia, a boy named Temujin was born clutching a blood clot the size of a knuckle bone in his right hand. In Mongol tradition, this was a divine omen from the sky god Tengri, a sign that this child was destined for violence and greatness in equal measure. Funny part, this man actually thought that holding a handful of congealed blood was a great way to introduce himself to the world. Most babies want a blanket. Temujin wanted to let everyone know he was choosing violence before he could even crawl. Not a single person in the room said anything about how deeply unsanitary that is. And honestly, that is where the trouble started. His father, Yesugei, was a minor warlord, powerful enough to have enemies, not powerful enough to survive them. When Temujin was 8 years old, Yesugei rode out to arrange his son's marriage to a girl from the Angarat tribe. On the way home, alone, he encountered a group of Tatars, the same people he had spent his career fighting. They offered him a meal. He accepted. The Tatars poisoned the food. Yesugei made it home, and then he died. Funny part, of all the decisions in human history, eating a meal prepared by people who genuinely hate your guts is easily in the top 5 worst. This man was a seasoned warlord. He had spent his entire life attacking these people, and he sat down and thought, yes, I will have the mystery wheat platter from my sworn enemies. Just incredible. He treated a blood feud like a minor misunderstanding that could be cleared up over some spicy mutton. After Yesugei died, the entire tribe abandoned the family. Not helped them, not supported the widow and her children, packed their yurts and walked away from a 9-year-old boy, his mother, and his younger siblings, leaving them alone on the Mongolian steppe with no food, no protection, and no allies. The family survived on roots, berries, and whatever small animals they could catch. Tensions inside the family exploded in 1176 when Temujin's older half-brother Bektur started stealing the younger children's food. One day, Bektur stole a fish Temujin had caught. Temujin was 14 years old. He took his bow, he found Bektur in a field, and he shot him. Funny moment, this man ended his brother's entire existence over a single fish. He actually thought that instead of just catching another fish, the correct response was a murder charge. Not a single person suggested, "Temujin, have you considered simply catching more fish?" It is just incredible that his mother's response to "I killed my brother" was a stern talking to, and then everyone just went back to hunting squirrels. Shortly after, Temujin was captured by the Tai-Chiyud tribe, rivals who feared what this dangerous young man might become. They locked him in a wooden collar and paraded him between camps as a prisoner. He escaped during a feast by knocking a guard unconscious with his own collar. Then he hid in the Onon River with only his nostrils above the surface for hours until the search parties passed. A man named Sorkhan Shira found him. Instead of reporting him, he hid Temujin in a cart full of wool and smuggled him out. Funny moment, this man actually thought he could hide from an entire tribe by sitting in a river and breathing through his nose like a very angry straw. The future ruler of half the world was defeated by a wooden collar and saved by a guy with a wool cart. Incredible! He really treated escape from captivity like it was a simple logistics problem. Twist number 2. By the time Temujin was in his 20s, he had done something nobody on the Mongolian steppe had managed before.
He had begun collecting loyal followers from every tribe, not through birthright, but through pure force of personality and a reputation for rewarding loyalty absolutely. In 1206, at a massive assembly called a Kurultai, the assembled Mongol tribes proclaimed him Genghis Khan, universal ruler. He immediately did something that genuinely shocked everyone watching. He fired every aristocrat in Mongolia. He dismantled the entire tribal hierarchy and replaced it with a military system based purely on loyalty and skill. The son of a blacksmith who fought brilliantly became a general. The son of a Khan who fought poorly became nobody. He promoted people based entirely on what they could do. Funny moment, this man actually told a room full of entitled Mongolian aristocrats that they were being replaced by the guy who fixes the horses. Let that sink in. His elite guards were basically 10,000 reasons for his commanders to behave themselves during the holidays. Not a single person in the room pointed out that the elite guard was really just an armored insurance policy. To ensure his generals stayed loyal, Genghis created an elite bodyguard of 10,000 men called the Keshig. These men lived in his palace, trained with him, and ate at his table. They were also the sons and brothers of every major commander in his army, high-status hostages dressed as bodyguards. Funny moment, this man actually thought the best way to keep his commanders from rebelling was to turn his palace into a very high-stakes daycare center. Incredible! Let that sink in. His elite guards were basically 10,000 reasons for his commanders to behave themselves during the holidays. Not a single person in the room pointed out that the elite guard was really just an armored insurance policy.
In 1218, Genghis sent a peaceful trade caravan to the Khwarezmian Empire, 450 merchants, loaded with goods, carrying an offer of trade and peace with the most powerful military force on earth. The governor of Otrar, a man named Inalchuk, accused the merchants of being spies. He executed every single one of them and seized their goods. Genghis sent a diplomat to request an apology. The Khwarezmian Shah killed the diplomat too. What followed was not a war, it was an erasure. The Mongol army descended on the Khwarezmian Empire with such systematic totality that cities which had existed for centuries ceased to exist within weeks. Samarkand, one of the greatest cities in the world, fell in days. When Inalchuk was finally captured, Genghis had molten silver poured into his eyes and ears. Funny part, Inalchuk actually thought he could kill 450 of the Khan's friends and just get away with it. Let that sink in. He poked the single most dangerous bear in human history with a very short stick and was shocked when the bear brought 1,000,000 friends to his house. Of all the decisions in human history, let's kill the messenger of the guy who conquers for a living is a masterclass in how to receive a silver facial you did not ask for. The Mongol army used a tactic called karash during sieges. They would round up thousands of local civilians and force them to walk at the front of the army towards city walls, human shields, to fill moats, to absorb arrows, to trigger traps intended for Mongol soldiers. City defenders had to choose between killing their own people or watching the walls fall. Funny part, this man actually thought a human firewall was a legitimate military innovation. Incredible. Let that sink in. He used people as living boards because he did not want to get his own boots dirty. It is just incredible that he treated human beings like very fleshy pieces of plywood and then wrote it into his official military strategy manual. By the time Genghis Khan died in August 1227, his empire covered more territory than any in human history, from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. Historians estimate that his campaigns killed 40 million people, approximately 10% of the entire global population at the time. Regions that his armies passed through would not recover their pre-Mongol population levels for 200 years. And yet, the Mongol Empire created the first free trade zone in history. Under Mongol protection, the Silk Road became safer to travel than it had been for centuries. Merchants, diplomats, and ideas moved from China to Europe for the first time. Some historians argue that the cultural exchange enabled by Mongol trade routes directly seeded the European Renaissance.
The man responsible for some of history's greatest destruction also enabled some of its greatest cross-cultural exchange. And then he arranged his own disappearance so completely that 600 years of determined searching has not found so much as a single bone. Funny part, this man actually thought the best way to have a private funeral was to turn the entire route into a literal graveyard. You could not say nice weather to the funeral procession without getting a sword to the face. Not a single person said, hey, maybe we just use a map and keep it in a safe. Incredible, just absolutely incredible. Somewhere beneath the Mongolian steppe, under grass that horses have crossed 1,000 times, the universal ruler is still keeping his last secret. The man who was born clutching a blood clot, who lost his father at 9, who was enslaved at 12, who murdered his brother over a fish, who hid in a river breathing through his nose, who fired every aristocrat in Mongolia, who turned 450 dead merchants into the destruction of an empire, who killed 40 million people and accidentally started the Renaissance. He wanted no grave, no monument, no marker. The greatest conqueror in human history specifically asked to be forgotten. History has not yet managed to do what he asked.